Hello, true believers. This is bebotsonly Vendetta. I think I'm gonna try to say Vendetta and kind of focus more, emphasize Vendetta more because I'm not saying this is a channel about Vendetta, but Vendetta is more, what is it, politically correct or more mainstream sounding than bebotsonly. Bebotsonly, if you say it has a lot of, what do you say, more explanation versus vendetta is kind of more people accept it more. But anyway, I wanted to talk about this comment. I woke up this morning, noticed the notification, and I got one comment. So I don't get too many comments now these days. I think it has to do a lot with this pandemic and everybody's kind of on their own, and the fact that I was gone for so many years, dormant for so many years, that I understand that people have moved on and it'll take me a while again to build up an audience, which I have no problem doing. I've done it in the past. And when I was when I was in prison, some of the people there knew that I was a vlogger, and they were asking, everybody's like, oh, when I get out of prison I'm gonna do vlogging also, and they were asking me questions, on how to do it, because they all we see on TV is a lot of people like becoming instant overnight millionaires from vlogging or becoming viral. So some of the people were asking me, well, what is it like, or how do you do it, or we know that you were a famous vlogger also. I go, yeah, you can say I was pretty famous, and or Bebot only is a name that's people know about it, but it's kind of like I said, since it's so politically incorrect, it was better. It was to the point where it was better to be caught watching porn than caught watching Bebot only. I remember I was, if you read any of the comments or if you talk to the people, if you read any comments that anybody makes, whether they you can have somebody that's obsessed with watching Bebots only every day, but you will never get them to admit it. So most of the people that watch Bebots only are closet Bebots only subscribers or watchers, or so there. Most people probably would fall. I would say, like I said, majority or 90% plus of people would fall in that category of the the closet Bebots only. Just like it would be similar to probably, but porn is becoming so mainstream now that it's okay to be watching porn or to be having porn in your computer. So but Bebot only doesn't fall in that mainstream category yet. I mean, we're still labeled with a lot of crime related labels, which everybody is famous for, and you all you have to do is read the comments, and you'll say that, of course I went through the whole justice system, so it's when it comes to Bebot only, it's guilty. It's guilty until proven innocent, and even proven innocent still guilty is what I have to deal with. But I mean, you can't really uh, so I'm just looking at the comments here. Nothing there. So here we go. I got distracted there for a second. So back to what I was saying here. So somebody made a comment, and and we're gonna go into this. Okay, so boil Rio made a request, and sure, why not? I do requests. I'm not so important. I'm not so into myself that I can't grant requests, especially if it's a request about something that I have experience with. And I always, when it comes to my own experience, I'm an expert at, so I don't mind talking about things that I'm an expert on. So I can't say, or I don't know if it's fair to say that I'm an expert on racism, but I mean, I'm sure there's people that have done studies or have done majors or have done thesis on racism. I haven't, but I'm definitely an expert on my experiences and my experiences with racism. So Wio, I'll just call him that. made a comment, says, "Are you going to write a story about anti-Asian bias? Asians are getting beat up or killed for being Asian in US, Europe, and Australia. The haters are cowards and usually beat up or kill elderly Asians." And on March 16, 2021, a hater killed 8 people in Atlanta, Georgia. In US, 6 were women of Asian descent. So he worded this statement or this comment very carefully, or no, very carefully, but very eloquent and very precise. And he made a lot of good points. So very well done. He got his message across, and it was what I call it. It's pretty politically correct in how he was forming his words. And so this person, I assume, is is American. It sounds like American. It feels American to me. Whether it's European American or Asian American, it's hard to tell because it's definitely American. Because if you're whether you're Asian American or European American, it's very hard to tell because once you're in America for a long time, you start having the attitude of Americans, the same attitude of Americans. But let's get back to racism and hate crimes. And I was looking at a meme earlier, and it didn't really say it was. I was looking at Asian hate crimes, and I was looking at memes and see what people are posting. Usually memes are pretty hilarious. I think I had a meme also, but I haven't looked it up yet. It's on my list of things to do. Okay, so one of the memes said that hate crimes. There was a meme on hate crime, and he said, well, normally that's where crimes usually come out of hate. There's no really the crimes usually come out from hate versus love. And I could probably make some arguments for crimes committed out of love. It's like, for example, euthanasia, or where you kind of end people's suffering. Somebody's terminally sick and they're dying and they're just suffering, and just put them out of their misery. I mean, that's fine. If they're terminal and they're just in pain and they want to die with some dignity, then yeah, go right ahead. But I know it's illegal, so that's fine. I mean, I have no problem with that. Sometimes we get in the situation where it's better, and they're gonna die anyways. Why prolong the suffering? It's better to have a quick death than a slow, painful death. So especially if you're in a lot of suffering. So I could definitely see the arguments there. Well, that crime would be not be born out of hate but out of love. But anyway, back to hate crimes and racism, and another term that were probably was used that's being used around now more. It's kind of more appropriate is xenophobia, and and xenophobia and racism has a lot of overlap, but is distinction. And I probably want to make the distinction because we're going to be using xenophobia more than racism at this point. And because xenophobia deals with more with fear, and because of that fear, you kind of attack or make decisions against that person. That your xenophobia is like fear of strangers or foreigners or somebody that's not like you, versus racism. Let's say you're in a position of, it's usually racism is about position of power. If you have like power over a person, or it's racism is just like saying it's more about I'm superior to compared to another race, just like Nazism is about racism, where like the Aryan white race is superior over any other races, including other white races, include like Jews are considered white, but they're racist against them also. So are they considered a race? Yeah, but they're a race within a race. So that's the distinct difference. One is more based on fear. One is so xenophobia is more based on fear, and one racism is based on more of like I should be have more power over you. So it becomes very complicated, especially if you have like when it becomes to superiority. It's more based on let's say you've got two races in America. One's Asian and one's white. So let's just talk about the majority. And so because I'm gonna get uh, I'm gonna get accused of reverse racism here, okay, which is a hilarious term. It's like race. So I'm racist against the racist. So we got this kind of double racism over here. So reverse racism. So so it's a pretty hilarious term, but we'll work with it. So uh, so let's say one race is more successful, and what you do now is what you create is a jealousy, where you got Asian business owners, and then you got white trash people that are just working for the government and they hate their job, and then you got an Asian person who's educated and successful, and he's loved by his customers, or what, if he's loved by, let's say he's a doctor and he's loved by his patients. And then you have like a white group over here that's like, oh yeah, that's like, okay, I'm gonna audit that person, and oh, because he's Asian I hate him and I'm jealous of him because he drives a nicer car, has a nicer watch, he has a beautiful family, he has a beautiful home, and I live in like, and then if that white person, meth addict, lives in auditor lives in Riverside, then you deal with that kind of racism. That's more racism. Okay. So do I have a lot of experience in that? Maybe. You could probably make some people could probably make some conclusions. But have I experienced racism in different forums? Yes, absolutely. But it gets to a point that racism becomes like a normal thing, just like air. I mean, if you live in America, racism is just something you accept. I don't think it's a matter of whether hating it or liking it or changing it. I don't think you could ever change it because you can't never change simple basic human emotion. And whether they're born out of racism, I don't think that's just kind of like the secondary. The primary is jealousy. Okay, so when you deal with racism, the primary is jealousy. The secondary is race, and it's like we go, oh, I'm gonna hate this person more. Okay, I'm jealous of this person, but if he's white, then I'm not gonna do anything about it. Okay, but if I'm jealous of this person, I'm jealous of this person, but if he's white, good for him. Power to the power, white power, good job. I wish I was rich as him, as successful as him. But then you got a white person seeing a Asian person successful, and then of course they're gonna be the same jealousy, but then there's gonna be this anger, this hate. It's like all of a sudden they're taking our jobs now. So you got this Asian person. So if this Asian person is successful and rich, then what they're doing is they're taking opportunities for that white person. Okay, instead of let's say customers or patients going to a white person, they're going to this Asian person now, and he's successful now, and he has a lot of business, and he's making a lot of money, and then now we got to make up reasons. So now you have a reason now to hate that person. So now they want to use their job, whatever it is. Yes, I live in Riverside and I just work for the government, and I just make money off of people's taxes. I could never survive on my own in a private business. And then all of a sudden this Asian person is successful. I'm going to audit him, and instead of making it civil, I'll make it criminal. Okay, because this is where racism comes in, where the jealousy is primary. He's more successful than I am, but he's taken away opportunities from other white people. Now I have to make sure he can't do that. So then that's where racism comes in. So that's an example, but this is not what we have over here with the hate crime. It's mostly xenophobia, fear, and this is more of a fear of the coronavirus. And let me make an example over here, this is hilarious. I think it's pretty funny. You got this one minority. It's like minority versus minority. So it looks like apparently we have this black guy. What confuses me is like nobody's wearing a mask, and they're in the subway. Nobody's wearing a mask, and I don't blame them. Me too. I hate wearing masks. I don't really need to wear a mask because number one, I already had coronavirus, and number two, I don't. In my experience, or from what I know, masks are not going to stop the virus from spreading. Okay, and I'll get into specifics why. Because the virus doesn't just spread by just breathing it. I mean, you could touch it, and you could spread it in other parts, and then that's how it'll get into your system. Not just by breathing it, you could also touch it. Is what I understand, or a possibility. That's how you touch something, and then you touch some other thing, and it lives there, and eventually you can't disinfect everything. So eventually you'll touch it and touch it again. You'll touch your face. That's why what cracks me up is I remember when I'd be watching on the news, and then you get these people all in their PPEs now, these personal protective equipment. They got all their they'll put it on. They got all these layers. They got the mask. They got the goggles. They got the they got the all the protective equipment. They got the gloves. They got the booties. They got the whole body equipment. Okay, then all of a sudden they'll reach. So now they're so they're all protected, right? And all of a sudden they'll reach into their bag, start using the cell phone, and put it back in their bag. Okay, and now that cell phone's infected with all kinds of whatever. It could have the virus. It could have a virus. It could have any bacteria on it. And then what's gonna happen is what's gonna happen is, even though you have all this personal PPE equipment, this person's gonna go home after their work, and then they're going to take off their PPE equipment, and then they're gonna go grab their phone and then spread the virus to themselves or whoever wants to use it. So their kids start playing with the phone and everything like that. So you got this personal protective equipment, but you have to, everything else you touch has to have personal protective, which is impossible to do. So it's just bad habits on top of that. So let me explain. Okay, for example, in an operating room. Okay, if you look at an operating room where doctors of course have personal protective equipment. They have gowns, they have masks, they have hairnets, they have gloves, they have booties. Okay, and so why? Okay, well, we have to, every operating room, you have to treat every patient as if they have like HIV, or in this situation coronavirus, whether they tested negative for it or not. That's what it's just normal protocol you have to wear. And that it's not just to protect the person operating, but also to protect the patients and also the people are, because we're going to be subject or exposed to like a lot of bodily fluids, blood, all sorts of good stuff. So in an operating room, yes, the doctors are all gloved up, and then the nurses are all gloved up and have their personal protective equipment on. But there is one person inside the operating room that's not gloved up. So we have like two areas. We have an area that's it's called sterile, and we have an area that's called non-sterile. And in that area that's non-sterile, there is what's a person that's called a circulator. And that circulator is the one that handles the phones, that handles anything that needs to be brought in that's not sterile. And what they do is they use, of course, sterile procedures of how they open things. So the sterile people don't have to touch anything that's non-sterile. So for example, I need another different kind of tool. And what this circulator will do is, and if it's not already, usually they'll have it prepared in the operating room already, so you don't have to touch anything that's not sterile. But if it's missing or you run out, then the circulator will go out, or will grab something, and then use, without touching the sterile area, will use the method where they'll peel or they'll open something, and then they'll drop it there without any contact whatsoever with the sterile environment, with the non-sterile environment. So that's what keeps infection or disease under control, or any biohazard under control. So, but if you're not doing that, if you don't have a circulator that's, okay, I can't touch my cell phone, and then you go around, and then after you take off your PPE equipment, touch it. So it's pretty much useless is what I'm saying. And unless you put PPE on everything you touch, or disinfect everything you touch, then the mask and whatever it is that you're wearing is pretty much useless. So what I'm noticing over here, so that's why I'm not a big fan of masks. So, okay, masks, shields, gloves. Okay, but what about the stuff that you're touching with the gloves? Okay, and then you bring it home and other things. So, it's not as effective. And I see everybody here in the subway is not wearing a mask. Okay, and I probably wouldn't wear one either. It's just I don't. And it's hard to breathe and it's uncomfortable. I can understand doing it in. It's hot and I can understand doing it, but in a operating room, you have a lot of air conditioning, so you're pretty comfortable, so you can wear all that stuff. But when you're wearing it outside, it's hot, it's hard to breathe. So I can understand why people don't wear it. I generally don't wear it. I just wear it because if I have to go into a restaurant or a store. But other than that, I don't wear it when I'm driving or when I'm at home, when I'm walking outdoors. I hate wearing it. But if you're inside and you're working, I do understand that's protocol. So you just have to follow protocol. But back to being this as xenophobia because of the fear of the coronavirus. And what cracks me up in this video that we're looking at right now is that this this guy is spraying Febreze on a another person, which is completely useless or doesn't really make any sense. But for a layperson, he thinks by just kind of spraying this person is kind of hilarious. That's probably if something I would do with my friends. Probably is just start spraying them. Not to be not that it's going to prevent a virus from spreading. I think I would do it much more for trolling purposes. But I don't think in this video this person's trolling whatsoever. So what we have here is more of xenophobia and fear and people acting out of fear. And what other racism? It's not. Yes, it is because of a particular race, especially because of Asians. That's where it comes in. And so it's more about xenophobia. But so why, what, how? I don't really see what the solution to this is. Okay, I'm trying to think. Well, what, how, where? What would be the solution to what's going on over here? And I think it's probably more. Let's talk about more about the source. Okay, so when people are what is the source? Well, people are angry because number one is people are scared, and when people are scared, like in like what is it in Star Wars that fear leads to anger, and anger leads to the dark side or the darkness of what people's actions are, and so that's basically the source. And the source of this fear is triggered by Asians because, like the term I'm hearing, the Kung Flu. I didn't hear that over here. I heard that in America or Western media. Then, if it was, then that's the race that they're performing this crime on, and appropriately, they wouldn't do it against Africans. And if it was Africans with the Ebola virus, then that's what would happen. But before Ebola virus can spread, it killed people first. So that's why it hardly did any spreading. So for excuse me. So the source of it is fear. Okay, when people are scared, they become angry. Especially right now with this pandemic, people are losing their jobs. You're talking about millions of people that are unemployed. And when people are unemployed, not only they're scared, they're also stressed. They can't do the things that they normally could do that to alleviate their stress. I mean, you can make the argument that stress, going to the gym, going to the spa alleviates stress. But now I can't do that because of the pandemic. And who are we to blame? I mean, bad things are happening. Stress is increasing, and we have to blame somebody. We can't blame ourselves. I mean, maybe you can make the argument that this is about tolerance also. I think when I was in California, there's this thing called the Museum of Tolerance. Okay, so we have to blame somebody, but we have little tolerance. So I'm just checking the phone, so it's still recording. or is it better be recording. And it's this lack of tolerance. So we got fear, we got stress, and we can't do anything. And there's even over here, there's a liquor ban, so people can't even drink to relieve their stress. So it's more about fear, and they're just directing it on Asians. Okay, so racism, and then so we got this one with the Fabrice, hilarious, not wearing a mask. And if you're really, my statement is, if you're really worried about, because I always say you can't control other people's actions, you can only control your own. Then just, if you're worried about getting infected, especially from Asians, then just stay at home or just avoid public places where you know they're gonna be. I mean, if it's public, then Asians have a right to be there also. Then don't go to those places. Just like when in the gym, when I usually pull down my mask when I'm in the gym, and then I got this one girl that said, you know, that I have to wear my mask appropriately. I almost got to the point, so I just kind of complied and I said, okay, sure, no problem. But I inside me, one side of me is saying, if you're really worried about it, and because wearing the mask is not gonna solve the issue here, because we're touching everything you're touching. If I'm touching the dumbbells, if I'm touching the equipment, you're still gonna get infected. Uh, because of course they could do sprays and things like that, but you can't spray everything. And part of me was just like doing is just to be sure that you don't get infected. Just stay at home, quarantine yourself. Okay, self quarantine is probably, but like most Westerners or most Americans or most people don't want to be quarantined. They would rather they would rather you comply, and comply with what, because it's not really effective. But if that's what they think, you know, psychologically feel that it's helping, if you wear a mask, then fine, I'll wear a mask. I'm pretty non-confrontational when it comes to these kind of things. So but in this situation they're not wearing masks, but they're showing Febreze. So let's react to the spa. It was so funny, the spa shooting. Well, it's not funny, but what the police were saying about how the person was just having a bad day, and then he had to take it out on Asian women working in these spa places. And then they touched on his sexual addiction also. So they were explaining things about the reasons why this person did it, targeted spas and targeted Asian women's. Well, because of his sexual addiction, not because of his. So that I can see the argument that they're making over here. So the argument was, this person was, number one, he was having a bad day. Number two, he has this sexual addiction, and number three, it happened to be, these spas are kind of synonymous with that, like the happy ending massages. So what they're trying to do or get across, or the message is that since he's sexually frustrated with his addiction, that's stemming from his addiction, he doesn't want anybody else relieving their addiction or having access to any of that kind of sexual activity. And this is the kind of, whether I'm not saying that this kind of happy ending sexual activities are. Do I have experience with them? Yeah. I actually did not. I was with some friends that were kind of into that thing, and I said, sure, I'll go along with you guys just for kicks and giggles. Tried it, and it wasn't at a spa, but it was an apartment that just kind of moves around from one place to another. And yes, it was Asian. It was in Alhambra that we went. It was a long time ago. It was actually in graduate school. When I was in graduate school, I did so with a bunch of my friends. We did it, I think, probably maybe twice. And then I just said, you know, they did it on a regular basis, but I didn't. After I tried it twice, I said, it just wasn't my thing. It wasn't like I said before. But anyway, back and I'll kind of, and as I got older, prostitution just didn't do anything for me. When you're younger, it's fine. but as you get older, like I said, I had a big problem with it. It became such a not a good experience for me because as you get older, and for me, the number one thing is the intimacy. If I don't have any intimacy with somebody, I cannot perform. I have performance issues, and I've been very open about that, and I think it's natural, so it's not something I'm ashamed of. But like I said, this person was having sexual problems or sexual addiction, and he had to take it out. And the problem with these spa places are usually it's kind of run by it's the oldest profession. It's kind of dominated by like the like the Asian population in that area. So I would have to say if it was more run by Indians or another different group, I think. But when it comes to America and these massage places, it's mostly dominated by Asian business owners. I think it's more of a function of that than the actual racism itself. It just happened to be against. So if that's one thing, probably I had to explain. So back to well, okay, we get it. It's fear. So it's against race. It's against Asians. So what's the solution? Well, we have to address the fear, and I don't think there's any solution to the fear at this situation because, especially the media, they're just kind of all doing all this the fear mongering right now that everybody it's like the end of the world. People are dying in the streets because the fear mongering that the media is doing when most of the people live through this. It's mostly the elderly or the people that are vulnerable. I mean, but most of the time, 9 times out of 10, I mean, you're talking about 1%, less than 1% of the people dying from this disease. So you have like a 99% chance. 99% means that you're gonna survive. You're gonna make it. And if you don't, it's just a crapshoot. I mean, your genetics, you're predisposed to it. There's situations where you really don't have any. You don't even have to have any pre-existing conditions. It's just a nasty luck of the draw, and you really can't blame anybody for that. But what you can't really blame is the media for the fear mongering. I think the best thing to do, the solution is stop the fear mongering. And sometimes if you kind of show more of this, people kind of copycat it because there's a lot of angry people. And if they see that, okay, other people are doing it, so it must be okay, so I'm going to do it also, whether people condemn it or not. People need to, so number one is the fear. And number two, people need the other solution is people need an outlet. Well, when you're locking down everything, when you're closing down everything, when you're taking away people's, I can understand where people want to go to the gym and now they can't do it. It's like they're angry. Who do they have to blame? We can't blame the people that closed down the business because they're just following the rules. We'll blame the Asians. So you got to give people an outlet. I mean, they can only, yes, I understand there's only so much tolerance, so much, but you gotta let them do what it is that that contain their frustration. You can't keep it inside because of the fear. Now, because of the lockdown, they have no outlet whatsoever. So that's kind of the number two kind of thing. And number three, it probably is time. I mean, eventually, the Spanish flu, I would have to look it up. How many months or how many years did it take for people to just kind of get over being racist or xenophobic against the Spanish because of the Spanish flu? So, so those are pretty the three things off the top of my head that's going to uh, the solution for this Asian hate crime is number one address the fear. We'll stop stoking the flames that get people afraid. Stop media from talking about how look at all these people are dying. Then all of a sudden people are thinking they're gonna die also, and they're afraid of getting COVID. I think for me there was a point I was afraid of it also. Of course, after I survived it, I wasn't afraid of it anymore. So that's probably the solution for that is over time. So as more people get COVID, as more people survive, and COVID becomes less about the face of Asians and it becomes more about like the face of survivors. I think they should show more videos of people surviving, how everybody is pretty much, you don't have to, I'm not saying you have to worry about it, but you don't have to worry about it to the point where you're so scared that you have to go and turn your fear into anger. So decrease the fear, you decrease the anger. And then now that you're angry and frustrated, I would probably say open up the economy. Go ahead. We have to look at is the disease worse than the cure? But when you're locking everything down and you're closing restaurants, you're closing bars, you're closing clubs, you're closing outlets for people to express their stress, then what you're doing is you're creating as like a ticking time bomb. So I would say open up the economy. Don't throw out. I don't really like that throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I think that would be just let, like most people say, go ahead and let the herd community happen. I mean, nobody's gonna go to jail because people die of natural causes, and it's only 1%. Do we suffer? Does the 90? This becomes about the good of the many, the good of the 99% outweigh the good of the few. Do we sacrifice the 1% so the other 99% can live? Or what we're doing is we're sacrificing the 99% and then the Asians also, so the other 1% will have a better chance, which they're probably going to die anyway, so why bother? Okay, they're going to get infected anyway, or they're going to die anyway. They have pre-existing conditions, or they're old. So instead of eating all the old people, just like that one song says, or just like the what's that movie where Soylent Soylent Green. So the pandemic is actually doing it for us. So instead of like eating all the old people, where they're such a tax on the health system, we should be using the money on the money, instead of keeping old people alive. We should be applying it to young people instead. So if a young person gets in an accident or gets sick and needs treatment, it wouldn't be so expensive. But the reason why it's so expensive is because we spend so much money on keeping a lot of old people alive. So it's kind of like a good, it's part of nature. I mean, disease, pandemics is part of the circle of life. So those three things, and with time, sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it, by just give it time. So those are the three solutions. You can cause more laws where all of a sudden a hate crime becomes a misdemeanor instead of a felony, and they could spend more time in jail. But I think that's kind of counterproductive, where the person now is not really a criminal. It's just it now becomes more of a hardened criminal because they spent more years in jail versus it was a misdemeanor. Because turning it from a hate crime, turning it from a misdemeanor to a felony, misdemeanors usually what they do is the maximum a person can be in jail is 1 year. So if you look at most crimes, if they're 1 year or less, it's a misdemeanor. But if it's a hate crime and it's classified as a hate crime, then it becomes more than 1 year. What is it, a maximum like 5 years? And what's the person that comes out of the hate crime after spending more 5 years in jail is probably going to be more hateful and more angry. And jail is not rehabilitative. It'll just make it's not really preventative. Most people who go to jail that long usually go back in committing more crimes, or usually before a person is not a criminal. He was just, like I said, like the police said, was just having a bad day. I'm not saying you can apply it to the to the person that just went out and murdered people. That's completely, now that person's a murderer now, okay, which is, and it's secondary. It's just a hate crime related or Asian crime, or because the spas were those sexually related activities because of his sexual addiction happens to be, then yeah, of course that person deserves the chair, okay, because he definitely crossed the line. There's gray areas where people could be rehabilitated. Could that have been prevented? Because of his, but then you have to deal with it's more of a function of probably of his sexual addiction. Most of the crimes now these days, like I said, is more of a function of fear and the ability to not express or give themselves an outlet. So those are the two things that I would suggest. So tone down the fear, tone down the rhetoric, so people are not triggered and they're angry every day, or because of this fear mongering. Because that's how people sell newspapers. That's how people sell views, is because of fear. You get more, like I said, because when people are angry, when you get those kind of emotions, fear, angry, hate, then people are more likely to watch. And then this is what it becomes about. These outlets, these medias, they have this agenda of getting people to watch more, to be people. So they're fear mongering. They're stoking people's fears. So then it translates to people out there being scared, and when they're scared, they get angry, and then they lash out. And then what do you do once you get this anger? Let them let them have a beer, let them go to their restaurants, let them go to their gyms, let them go out, go back to their jobs, so they can go work again, so they can do something more. But when you can't do any of those things, then that's when we have a recipe for disaster. And like I said, they should, if the media should be talking about, look at, it's no big deal, 99%, and we just have to just kind of be practical about it, and with time. So that's probably the only solution. What could you do for people? He can't quarantine them. It's gonna make people angry more. Then just open it up and let people have an outlet. And if people get infected, 2 weeks, they get the fever, you get a headache, take some Tylenol, you survive, then you go on. That person doesn't have a hate crime anymore. He's not going to hate people anymore. But when you got a person that hasn't gone through it yet, and they don't want to get infected, and then they can't go to their gym or they can't go to their job, so what are they going to do? So they're going to express their anger and hate. So those are the three things. The media has to tone it down. You gotta give people an outlet. You gotta open up the economy again, so they can feel, so they have something to do. And number three is you gotta with time. What then? The other thing is, what do I do as an individual? Okay, tolerance. Just like when that girl came up to me, she was actually cute, so I didn't want to be confrontational with her. Is tolerance. Just okay. Don't return it. If somebody does something to you, the lady pepper sprayed him, I would just like walk away. I would just like take another bus. It's the same thing what I would do. So what do you do as an individual? You can't control other people's actions. You can control your own. Just like when I'm driving and I had to cut somebody off because I'm merging. Like for example, I'm in an expressway, I'm on a freeway, and I'm merging, and I have no choice but I have to merge into your lane. And some people especially I remember SUV people, they get really upset when I merge in front of them. They want me to brake and merge in front of them, which is kind of dangerous. You're supposed to go with the flow of traffic. I got no choice. I gotta merge. I don't really have sometimes I drive an economy car at that time. I don't have the power to merge with a lot of speed, and especially that's where you need a car that goes 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds. Well, what happens if you have a 4-cylinder economy car that goes 0 to 60 in like 10 seconds? And that becomes a problem when you're merging and people get upset. And sometimes I cut off people accidentally. I remember I cut off a motorcyclist because I didn't see him. He was going so fast. All of a sudden I merged because I looked through my rear mirrors first. I checked my blind spot. Then all of a sudden I'm merging. And as I'm merging, all of a sudden this motorcycle person was just going so fast. He comes out of nowhere, and it looked like I cut him off, and he was angry at me. So he was like playing games with me where he's like trying to brake in front of me and going around me and things like that. And instead of perpetuating it, okay, I made a mistake, and so I just hit the brake and safely and create as much distance from that person as possible. Same thing in this situation. Me cutting off a person is like me being Asian or me being a Pacific Islander. And what you have to do now is create some distance. Okay, if they say a slur to you, if they say that, all the best thing for you to do is watch people's movements, watch people's actions. People don't all of a sudden become violent at you. Usually they have this look of anger, of stress. They just have this look of toxicity in their face. Of course, there's situations where they can't do anything about it. But 90% of the time, a lot of confrontations can be avoided. I mean, if they're walking a certain way, if they're looking at you a certain way, just go the other direction. Hit the brakes and just say, I don't want to be part of this. Of course, there's somebody that all of a sudden runs up to you, then you just kind of run away from that person. And it becomes harder if you're old. Well, don't go out there by yourself. If you're old, have somebody use the buddy system. It's a safe thing. Go in the group. There's safety in numbers. Is it right that you have to go in numbers and because you're safety? No, but like I said, you can't control other people's actions. You can only control your own. So I'm giving practical advice. You can't control the media. You can't control time. You can't control the economy opening up. But you can control when you go out. You can't control when you go, who you go out with. You can't control what happens if you're facing a situation that could be confrontational. Okay, there's 99 million ways to walk away from a fight. Okay, and it takes two people to get confrontational. Okay, so if you don't want to get confrontational, it's like, okay, move. All right. Usually that person. I remember when I was playing basketball one time. And this was before my knee injury, and I was very good at it. And it was frustrating one of my friends, and he got angry, and he was angry probably about some other things. Maybe his business venture wasn't successful, and he was playing basketball. He was taking it out on me because I was doing all the scoring, and it had nothing to do with my race. It had something to do with me doing a lot of scoring against him. So he was getting frustrated. He was pushing me. He was shoving me, and I said, look, this isn't going to work because I'm going to keep scoring. If I keep scoring, he's going to push me and I'm going to get injured. And the best thing to do was I took a timeout and I just checked myself and I subbed myself out. Well, what should have been done is that person should have he was the one who should have gotten out of the game because he was the one who's being hot-headed. But I can't control him. I can't tell him to get out of the game. So it was me. I excused myself and I let somebody else that was waiting to play sub in for me. And I told him, you guys better win because if you don't win, then that means you can't win without me. And if you lose, you win, then my team wins. So that's a positive. But if you lose, it's still a positive. I'll just say, oh, you guys can't win without me. So making that analogy, making that example is like if somebody's giving you a problem or grief in a restaurant, pay the bill and just leave, okay? If somebody is in a subway, take the next exit and just leave. Don't escalate the confrontation by staying there and by returning the favor or by returning the hate. It's just all you're doing is just asking for it. It just gets to a point you have to be the bigger person, you have to be the better person, and just like okay, this is your train, this is your subway. I'm gonna take another, or I'm gonna walk just for this time until this whole pandemic settles down. When that is, who knows? How long are you gonna do it? This is a situation that it's better to be wrong and safe than to be right and be in danger. So when it comes to how I comment on the spa thing, you're just at the wrong place at the wrong time, and you're in the wrong industry, and then the spa massage industry happens to be predominantly Asian owned, so of course it's gonna look like because of the race, so that's why it's a race hate crime. But like I said, if it was other races doing it, then it would be a race. It's still a racist crime against that race. So, what can you do in that situation? Well, avoid those kind of economic situations. But the industry, that human trafficking industry, the massage parlor industry, it's pretty. If you look at it, it's voluntary. They're doing it because of economic reasons, and a lot of it has to do is the people, the people, the job sourcing people that do this, because what they do is they put the so you got a poor person, they want a job, they put them in the sex industry, they give them so much debt, because there's so much debt that goes into greasing the wheels to getting a visa, that this person has no choice but to become a sex worker, to work as a sex worker to get out of that debt. So it has to do with the economics and the people that put them in the human traffickers that put them, the debt that they get locked up in on all this debt. So that's another issue in itself. Okay, so so why is it that it's going to be the Asian spa massage happy ending owners? Well, that has to, what do you do about it? Well, you have to address the economics of it, and number two, you have to address the people that enable it, and how they enable it is they put them in so much debt that they'll never ever be able to work their way out of it. So that's another issue. So that's probably my only commentary on the Asian spa shooting. But these hate crimes that are random, like the one here on the subway, is, like I said, there's a 99,000 million ways to walk away from a confrontation, and just do that. And because I don't think there's anything we could do to stop the fear, because that's how these news outlets, this news media survive, is through these kind of, is they have to cause people to be afraid so people will watch. Okay, that's what their agenda. I mean, I've been through this also. They'll make up lies, and they'll cause people to get emotion. They need emotion, because that's what people will watch. Same thing with my trolls. I have more trolls because my trolls are watched because based on emotion, and people who are emotional will most likely watch, are more dedicated to watching than people that are non-trolls. So, and I accept that it's part of the ecosystem also. There's nothing I can do about, I can control their actions, and they can't control my actions. And when I make my actions are based on things that are what I want. So when I tell people, when I was in prison, I tell them my advice is when it comes to vlogging. You're not going to be an instant millionaire. It's a rare kind of thing, and that's what all they show is on TV is the successful. They don't talk about the failures, so everybody thinks that it's going to be that easy. Same thing with the media, that all they talk about is all this gloom and doom about people dying. They never talk about the people surviving, because so all of a sudden you think that you have to be afraid of it. And then I tell people that if you're gonna vlog, or if you're gonna do it because you enjoy it, do it because you want to express yourself, you want to share ideas, it's an outlet for you. You're doing it for yourself, not you're doing it for other people. Yes, you're doing it for other people, and you're doing it because the money is going to be secondary, tertiary, but the primary thing is, if you're going to be successful at it, you're doing it because you want to, not because of other people want to, or you're doing it for the money. Because you're not going to see, I mean, I've been vlogging for 15 whole years. And as you can see, I get no money out of it still. I don't get no super chat, I don't get no hot chat, I don't get no advertising. But as you can see, as long as I enjoy it, I'll keep doing it. And there's several reasons why I enjoy it. I enjoy the people that I interact with, even if it's just you can count them in one hand. Human beings are still human beings. And if it'll give them entertainment for a moment, and share ideas and something that they can relate to, then why not? Number one, I always thought I was an artist, whatever job you are in. You could be an artist, you can be a lawyer, you could be a business, you can be making bread, or you could be a baker, you could be a doctor, and you could still be an artist. Okay. I remember when I was talking about certain things, it's not more of a science, it's more of an art. So I've always said that I'm an artist, and this is kind of, the video is kind of like these videos, or this is kind of like my medium also. So as an artist, you're also an entertainer. So I would like to think that people are being entertained by me expressing my ideas or sharing my experience. And because I enjoy being an artist and being an entertainer. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it. If you agree or disagree, or what you think you should be done about the hate crimes that are increasing, I there's nothing you can do about it. So except that stay safe, and you just use common sense to stay safe and to stay away from these attacks. And the media's there's I'm sure there's a lot of Asians out there that are not being attacked, that are walking just fine. I think what you should just do is probably focus also not on just the negative things that are happening. We should also focus also on the positive. The not all people are bad, and then that they should copy that. But how do you copy just normal people being normal? I guess is the problem. So back to my back to the original problem. Let Since they're not going to open up the economy, they're going to continue the lockdown because of the fear. Then to save the 1%, then the 99% of us will just have to live in fear. And when you live in fear, you just have to act or move and make your actions based accordingly. That here's what you have to do when you go outside. Everybody is everybody is a walking hate crime. And if you look at everybody as a walking hate crime, then you can easily avoid the hate crime. Just like me, the police are never going to catch me again, because every time I know what the police are all about, which I'm going to, they're not, which I haven't talked about the reasons why, the reason why police do what they do, because they're a bunch of criminals that need to do it for money. I mean, they're not, well, they need money. What they do is criminal, and of course that makes them criminals. And they'll use their gun to make money and get money and extort money and blackmail money, which I have evidence over here that they committed a crime, and I showed it to you in black and white. So you have to look at everybody. So you have to avoid it. So everybody is a walking hate crime. So now you could do the reverse racism. The only person that you're not going to look at as a walking hate crime is Asians. So Asians are not going to hate crime against themselves. So if you see a non-Asian, it's a white person or any other race that's not Asian, then you don't have to look at him as a walking hate crime. But in this environment, when you go outside, you have to look at everybody as a hate crime ready to happen. And if you know that, then as like G.I. Joe says, knowing it is half the battle, then you could avoid the hate crime, and you can keep your family safe, and you can keep yourself safe, and you don't have to worry about this hate crime happening to you. How do you avoid being the person that's being shot if you're working in an Asian massage parlor? Like I said, it has to go back to the economics. It has to go back to the headhunters that put you in that situation, because put you in so much debt. Because those Asian sex workers or those massage workers did not plan on being in debt in life, that they have to service all these people that come into their customers, and nobody wakes up, or nobody is born and plans on that happening. It just becomes a situation where it becomes economics and the policy that people put so much people in debt that they control them with this debt, that they have no choice. And then you just happen to be at that time where this person is having a bad day, and you're in that industry. So there's really not much I could do about that. But for the regular hate crimes, like I said, I walk and be afraid. Just like with doctors or surgeons, they have to, and every person that they perform surgery on has HIV. You have to talk about has AIDS or hepatitis C. Same thing. When you go outside, except for you do this reverse racism or reverse prejudice, that you're not everybody is that everybody is going to do a hate crime on you because of this coronavirus, because they have no outlet, and it's not going to happen soon. The media is going to keep pumping the fear. Everything is going to continue to be locked down. So all you could do is keep yourself safe, is look at everybody as this Febreze person or this person, and you just go to another bakery, or you just get off on this train, there's another train coming by. Like I said, it's better to be wrong. There's no principle over here, because it's just like with accidents. Okay, yes, I have the right of way, but I messed up my car. And now all that time, if I could have just gave that person the right of way, even though he didn't have the right of way, so you could be safe and you could move on, and then you didn't get injured. Same thing over here. You might get injured. So be wary now that these hate crimes happen, and that the next person that you're going to be running into, make sure you keep some distance from them and run away from them. Because, and if you're with an older person, then use kind of that distance, that buddy system, that stay away from toxic people is probably the best advice that I can give. If anybody has better advice, or they agree or disagree, please let us know in the comments. And that's pretty much all I have to say, how I want to address this. I mean, I could pretty much talk about race and my experience with racism, but I wanted to keep this video under an hour and just focus on the hate crimes and the racism that's produced because of the pandemic, and how the media is portraying it, and why, and this is how and why people are reacting. They're they're angry, they're afraid, they're angry, they're walking time bombs, and the Asians are the easiest, or are the easiest people to express their how they're triggered by the Asians, because they are associated with the pandemic because it came from China. There you go. That's pretty much it. Thank you very much, Wio, for the comment and for the suggestion. So this is your request. This one is especially for you. If anybody has any special requests about what would you want me to talk about, and if I could do it, if I have the time, or if it's appropriate at the time, then I have no problem doing it. Anyway, this is Vendetta. Thanks for watching.